on to the next step of marble. Now, here's a fun pop quiz. Can anyone remember the 3 S's that I mentioned that go for almost any scenic thing you're working on?
Stumble, shape, and seal.
Good guess. We got the first one. But so it's scumble, spatter, spray are usually like the 3 things you'll end up putting into a product. So today we are going to, I'm going to demo a type of spattering. This step first is another S that is common, but it's not quite the spatter yet. I just wanted to go ahead and tuck that in, bring that up to the forefront of our memory. So with marble, again, as I've said before, I'm going to reiterate, especially with marble, 1,000 different ways to get to the end product. And almost anyone you work with has a different way of doing it. I'm actually combining kind of 2 different techniques today. We're going to be doing some sponging, some straight up sponging, and we're going to be doing some spattering. We're going to be also doing that with the sponge, which usually when you do a spatter, and we're going to get to this more in our brick, you're going to use a paintbrush. That's a little more common for a spatter, but in this case, a little sponge spatter can go a long way. So, but first, we're going to just do sponging. Now, recall I said your sea sponge, your best friend. We love these. These are great. And again, remember, these were once living creatures. So, all respect and love for them, but they give the best texture. They hold moisture really well. We love them. So you're going to have this color. Please read labels. Things, as you guys have seen, things start looking real similar as we go. This one is your sponge gray dark. So you're going to take that, and basically you're going to kind of, and this is very important. I want you guys to have these elevations on you. I will bring up more sleeves because what we're working towards, like by the time you get to your final project, I'm not going to be telling you how to build it. I'm not going to be giving you a step-by-step. I'm going to give you the elevation. Maybe we'll have some color, but you guys are going to be doing these steps yourself. So again, start getting used to really looking at elevations and trying to break them down. So for this next step, we're trying to kind of put in the dark areas. And for a marble, thinking about with marble, and this may help you, this may not, think about how it's made can sometimes help you in sort of deciphering how something looks. Marble is a bunch of compressed stone that is pressed under pressure for a very, very long time, and all those veins that you see in a lot of marble that they like to use in theater, that is when the stone layers have come apart slightly and sediment and water has run through. So what you're seeing is the leftover patterns of water. So basically intense pressure, lots of compression, and water is what is making this piece. And that's why when we get to the spatter step, we tend to like use a more watery step because water is what has actually helped the shapes form. So in this case, there's these sort of darker areas that we want to lay in a little bit. So take your sponge again, drippy. First thing you're going to do, that I didn't do, that you are going to do, is you're going to tape around the outside. I got you guys better tape, that should work much better. And you're going to take it around the very outside edge after you marker. Other little step, we don't usually do this, but these lines are proving a little more tenacious than usual. So you're going to take just a regular sponge, as you know, just a little bit damp, and you're just going to very gently pat those lines after you flog. So charcoal, give it a real good flog, and then a very lightly damp sponge, just gently dab at them to press them back. If you start wiping, you're going to pull up paint. Please don't do that. So then take your sponge, and there's all different, I'm going to bring up all different kinds of sea sponges. You're going to find, this is why you have your sample space. Play with them a little bit. Play with this technique. See what gets you the result you like. But I'm going to be showing you, you basically have in this corner kind of this darkish area moving through. So what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to try and like get the shape exactly, but I'm just going to start laying on the color. And again, sponging can be, some of you are going to love sponging and some of you are really going to hate it. And same thing with the spatter, because there's a lot of just do it and try and get the motion. And then you're going to have another sponge that you just dipped in water, and you're going to sponge back a little bit and smooth it out a little. You don't want to lose all the texture. You don't want to like get it so smooth that there's nothing there. Because remember, once this dries, you can see in places I left it a little bit heavier. This is actually a little bit of a better indication, but there is that little bit of motion. It's the same thing in marble. There is motion, there is texture. So you basically just kind of want to sponge back in places, leave others a little bit dark, and just let that motion come in and through. And again, you're going to find certain sponges, You might try one sponge at first and you're like, I don't really like that. So really just use this area to play. Find the one. I happen to like these two sponges. I think they're great. And don't worry as much about, we're not worrying about drop shadows right now. So when you look in the elevation, you see these super dark like linears, those shadows. Don't worry about that. We're really worried about, not even worried, but we're looking at those areas where those darks are moving in and out of the lights. And you can get a little heavy with it because not only are we going to do a spatter drop on top of this, but we are also going to be doing sprays. So we're going to get all 3 S's in on this project. So remember, this is all about layers, things pressing back. So you don't want to get too light and pretty in one layer and then it can't come up through. So, and I kind of like that. I think that's good. There's a little bit of dark on the frame, so I might pull that in. There you go. And again, you can always, like same rule. You can always put down more. It's really hard to take it back. So, and this is also, these steps are also going to be a long time in drying. So I do want us to kind of set up fans and things like that. So if you get this step done, you can really get it dry as fast as possible. Otherwise, this would also might be a good opportunity to work on wood if you're still there, or maybe working on your color wheel if it's not in the room right now. So yes, so that's your next step is a sponge step. Also, I like to wear gloves when I sponge because you're gonna get your hand entirely in the paint, and at least for me, I don't like the feeling of it in the beds of my nails. I mean, like getting like regular paint there, it's like fine, whatever, but whatever. This sponging steps are very messy. So, also, especially the next step, and you'll see why. Be very aware of what's around you, and if you need to grab drop cloths, I would go get drop cloths and cover things, because we cannot get garbage on the genie, on any of the audience. So this is when we start needing to being aware of where we are in the space, okay? And also, if you like your shoes, for the next step especially, might recommend, this might be the only
That's a
time I say,
hazard.
very carefully, you can be in socks, okay? Or, if you can find shoe covers, maybe you won't get to the second step today, but the next step, and when we do sprays especially, you ever want to know who actually works as a scenic artist? Don't look at their pants, look at their shoes, because that is going to be where all the mess gets. So yes, that is just a heads up on that. All right, so next step. Okay, next step. What are we doing? All right, so the next step is basically similar to what we just did, how we're kind of we're using this step to amp up our darks. The next step is about amping up the lights. Now again, this is going to be, it's called a sponge spatter. Not often used, but it's my favorite technique for a marble, and it's because you still have a little bit of control over where it falls, but it's going to behave a lot because it's basically water. It's going to behave like water. It's going to move like water. So and also it covers a large area really, really quickly, which is time is very much of the essence, especially a lot of times people want marble floors. Floors are large. So anything you can do to speed along your process is going to be really, really helpful for you. So this is very, very watered down. Just mind the smooshing. So I think what did I do?
So this is after you're finished going in with the dark.
Correct. So what I did, so I'm not going to worry about that corner I just did. I did this whole area. I have not. So I've already done the sponge spatter here. You can kind of see this really great like motion and movement. You can see how it has a little bit of pattern, a little bit of rise and fall in this. This is how it dries. That's the other thing. Gotta be when you're working. Sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, it's just like so. Like you'll see the spatter goes down. You're like, you can't see anything, and then it dries, and you're like, oh, Again, it's always trying to anticipate how something's going to behave, which as you work with it, and I'm already seeing so much improvement. Like between your scumble on your wood and your scumble on this, it's like already like night and day difference. You guys are really rocking it. So just bear that in mind. That's how I did it. Okay, we're gonna do it that way. Okay. So I'm going to go with this sponge because this is a pretty small space. So just, and again, I recommend you not stand too close to me for a moment. But and again, camera's not good. Okay, great. So for the spatter drop, again, I'm really gonna look at this elevation. And I can see I have a really nice set of light kind of in the middle, and then it's not, and then at a certain arc. So I'm gonna just over kind of everything. And you can see how this will get messy. And again, don't be afraid. Give it a little lick on your flour. Then, again, you have one that's already just like has water on it. Just come in and soften. Again, the goal is not to pull it up. The goal is to get a little bit more texture, a little bit more movement, and a little more variation moving through. And this is where I might look and be like, oh, okay, so there's this great light area up in here, so I'm not gonna pull that part up as much. But again, just kind of take your time with it. You don't have to rush. It is gonna be wet for a very, very long time. So you have a lot of time to really get in and work it, but you saw how quickly I was able to cover that space. And again, I drifted over into where it was wet over here, that's fine. At least for demonstration purposes. You're really gonna let your dark layer dry before you do the sponge spatter. But again, you can already start to see how much push and pull you can get and how different and how much texture you can, like, again, there's a lot of playroom, there's a lot of this. In this case, we want a little bit of texture, but mostly it's about motion. Letting this motion be what it is, and then kind of softening it back. Does that make sense? And again, as you get into your flour, you can kind of pull it away a little bit, but the flour, part of the reason we went ahead and drew in the flour, and we're not doing, that will be one of the last steps, is lifting up that flour. But we want to make sure that the marble underneath is still in the same path, and this is how you can get there. So again, pick your sponges, pick your poison, play on your outer area, which again is going to be, you're going to have a nice tape line, not going to have to worry too much. And again, if you do, like, sometimes you'll get spatter, like where you don't want, you're like, I didn't want it there. Again, you can always push it back. You can always get more water. If I see something, I'm like, that's looking a little one note, just keep pulling back, laying down, pulling back, laying down. Okay? Makes sense? Comments, questions, concerns, thoughts that are relevant. All right, I think we're good.